Hello and welcome to Food for You and the Planet, a fresh new podcast that explores healthy and environmentally sustainable food solutions. This podcast is brought to you by Healthy Plan Eat Online Farmers Market. I'm Dr. Rosemary Ostfeld and I'm your host. Together, we'll hear from leaders in environmental science, agriculture, medicine, nutrition, entrepreneurship, and more. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to hear all the latest in healthy and sustainable food with Food for You and the Planet. Today's episode features Lauren Sandstrom, Certification Administrator at Baystate Organic Certifiers. Lauren joined Baystate Organic Certifiers 10 years ago as a certification specialist and then became a certification administrator in 2016. In 2014, Baystate certified 300 organic farms and processing facilities and had 6 employees, but has grown. Prior to her position at Baystate, Lauren was a certification reviewer for another certification agency accredited to the USDA, totaling 15 years experience regulating the USDA Organic Regulations. Lauren also has a certificate as a crop and livestock inspector through the International Organic Inspectors Association. Lauren grew up on a certified organic farm in central New York and knows the labor of love that organic food production is. Lauren is honored to have participated in the growth of organic food production over the last decade and a half and is looking forward to see the program continue to develop and support certified organic food production. Thank you so much for being here today, Lauren.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So what is Baystate Organic Certifiers and what type of work does it do?
Well, Baystate is an organic certification agency. We're accredited by the USDA to enforce the National Organic Regulations. We certify organic farms, livestock operations, and processing facilities to the USDA Organic Regulations, and we grant them the ability to make organic claims and to use the USDA Organic Seal.
How did you become interested in a career in sustainable food and agriculture? Can you tell me a little bit about the farm you grew up on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up on a certified organic vegetable farm. Um, I don't remember much life other than that. It was just a farm. We grew our food. We were very small market garden, but that is just what we did. Um, and I actually left home and I had a career in the luxury hospitality industry in my previous life. And in 2010, I was starting a family and I needed a career change. Just so happened the certification agency that certified our family farm needed a certification reviewer. And I said, well, let me see what that's all about. And here I am 15 years later.
That's an awesome story. I love that. So what is the National Organic Program and how did it begin? Like, how do we even have USDA Certified Organic?
Yeah. So the National Organic Program is basically the rulemaking body that determines the regulations for organic production. And they are not only domestic standards, any food that comes in from any other country is under those same regulations. The National Organic Program began really back in 1990 with the Organic Food Production Act, which passed, and that established the framework for the National Organic Program to be built and become who it is. So it was actually 10 years before the final rules establishing the NOP were first published in December of 2000. And then the first certification agencies, such as Baystate, we were part of the first ACAs that were accredited by the USDA back then. The first group were accredited by the USDA in April of 2002. So a little over 20 years ago now.
What were some of the key reasons why a national organic program was created?
It was created and it was needed because prior to the National Organic Program, there was organic and there were organic regulations, but there were a number of individual agencies. They all had different regulations or different variations of the regulations. And the rules could be different depending on who you certified with. It it kind of was a whole bunch of different little groups, and the need for there to be consistency across the board was very much needed when talking about organic food production.
How were the USDA certified organic standards initially created, and how are updates made?
It is really a very similar rulemaking process to every rule made under the Federal Code of Register. The USDA and the NOP issues a notice of proposed rulemaking, and it indicates what the rule is, or what rule is being changed, or what updates are being made. And then it includes a public comment period. That time frame is always specified, and it's available for public comment. Anybody in the public can make comments on it. They then go back and they analyze those comments, and if there are comments that are persuasive, have new data, new arguments, or new information, the rule could absolutely be canceled. It could be adjusted, modified. It's all evaluated, and then the final rule is published. There's an implementation date, and then a period to transition into that new rule.
What are some of the core criteria for a USDA certified organic? If someone's buying something that's certified organic, what are some of the main things they can know about that product?
Well, it goes back to the rule. And kind of the first rule, it's under general certification, which is under 7 CFR 205-200, is the production practices implemented they must be implemented in a way that maintains or improves the natural resources of the operation, including the soil and water quality. Then there's what we call the big three. There's no GMOs, no sewage, sludge, and no ionizing radiation. Natural methods are the foundation of the organic regulations, utilizing natural methods prior to using any substances whatsoever. And then the few instances where there are materials or inputs that are allowed, they still have very strict regulations. So you can't just go use something that is allowed. You have to first be able to show your certifier that you've done your crop rotations, and you've done selective seeds, and you've tried all of the natural things, and you're going to lose if you don't use this approved material.
Something that really caught my attention in what you mentioned was that one of the first things that's important is to benefit the land and the water quality. So the term regenerative agriculture is becoming quite popular, and that's one of their claims. So why is it important to continue to focus on USDA certified organic, which has that as like a bedrock to the foundation?
Well, it's definitely important to keep focusing on organic right now, because regenerative agriculture is it's great, but it also is very similar to how the organic regulations were prior to the USDA. There's multiple agencies. They also are, they have different variations of the regulations, where organic has a single standard that is enforced not only in the US but around the world. So it's the same no matter where it is. There are also some claims that regenerative agriculture could possibly be a form of greenwashing, and it's being used by conventional farmers that can't qualify as organic and still allows them to make a sustainable claim. My understanding of the regenerative ag is that it is evaluated in a holistic manner, and it's on practices that are supposedly going to take place over a number of years, which means that a regenerative ag farm today could look very much like a conventional farm, and there's no guarantees that that farm is going to adopt the practices long term, or that it's ever truly going to be regenerative. There's synthetic fertilizers and pesticides that are allowed. And many of them use them. It's very hard to have a no-till plan and not be using herbicides. I don't believe that there's any standards in regenerative for livestock or handling. The organic regulations are really, really, really robust for not only crops, but for livestock and for processed products. And when you're buying a product labeled regenerative, especially a processed product in the grocery store, there's no processing standards. So really that means that potentially one ingredient in that processed product was grown regeneratively, but you don't know much about anything else, how it was produced, the facility it was produced in wasn't inspected. So I don't, I think that regenerative ag is fantastic, but it's not quite there yet.
Well, there is an organization out there called the Regenerative Organic Alliance that uses USDA Certified Organic as their launching point. So in order to be Regenerative Organic Certified, an organization has to be USDA certified. So how can that type of structure at least be helpful to try to stop some of that greenwashing taking place?
I think that honestly, that structure is in a way almost the best practice of organic. Um, those organic regenerative farms are unfortunately just a really small portion of it. Those are organic farms that are then agreeing to a second subset of structures, and it is combining both. And I think that's, fantastic and great. I just think it's such a small number of them that many consumers may be confused and they may not understand that there's a difference or how to know what the difference is and make an assumption that, oh, it says regenerative, so it must be all of these things, when it probably is not, with the exception of that very small group of people that are going to that length of accepting that second set of standards.
What role do certifiers such as Baystate Organic Certifiers play in the USDA Certified Organic certification process?
So, common misconception of many is that the USDA certifies, and they don't. Nobody is certified by the USDA. Certification agencies are accredited by the USDA, and then certification agencies such as Baystate certify the operation. So we enforce the USDA regulations, and the USDA makes sure that we are enforcing their regulations. Our process with the USDA is very similar to the certification process, although a little deeper, or a lot deeper sometimes with audits and things like that. But they do a fantastic job of accrediting the agencies to make sure that they're effectively enforcing the regulations fairly and across the board.
What are some other common misconceptions about USDA certified organic that farmers may have?
There are so many. There are so many. I do a whole lot of outreach and marketing. Big goal with that is just to dispel the myths and the misconceptions. There's so many farms out there that think they cannot be organic, and they can be. A big one is they don't realize they could be a split operation. You could have organic crops and have not organic chickens, and that's okay. You can also have, let's say you have 50 acres and 25 acre flies, but some of it did have synthetic substances put on it, and you're transitioning that land. You don't have to wait until that transition is complete to certify the entire property. You can apply for certification. You have to have a really solid segregation plan in place that we, inspect very, very closely, of keeping crops separated, preventing commingling, but it absolutely is possible. And it's very common to have organic crops and not organic animals on a farm. A lot of people also think if I have organic land, I can't pasture my non-organic beef cows or my chickens on it. And that is not true. You certainly can. Manure, people think manure has to be certified organic to be used on an organic farm, and it does not. You can source manure from any source. You just have to have evidence that nothing has been applied to it. It's not had anything applied to it to make it break down or reduce the smell, and that sort of thing. But you can get manure from your neighbor horse farm and use that in a certified organic production plan. A lot of people don't understand that they have a choice in certifiers. They think they have to go with whomever certifies in their state specifically. That is not the case. That does go back to when the regulations were often monitored by state agencies before the USDA. And Baystate certifies the entire country. So, we certify operations in California and Florida. So people have a choice. There's, I believe, about 70, give or take, ACAs right now. And they don't all certify everywhere, but a lot of them certify outside of the state that they're located in. And by having that choice, every ACA has the exact same set of standards, the USDA Organic Regulations. The process is the same that is part of the regulations, but there are differences in certifiers. So some are for-profit corporations. There are a few that are still state agencies, and then there are also 501c3 nonprofits, which is what Baystate is. And we all enforce the same regulations, but we run our businesses differently. So Baystate is, we say we're kind of like a boutique style certification agency in that all of our staff members' cell phone numbers are published on our website. We don't have a main office number. We don't have a phone tree. And if you need to talk to somebody on Saturday because you're having a crisis that you need to know if you can use a material, say, there are 15 phone numbers posted on our website that you can call and you can reach somebody. With the cost of certification, a lot of people believe it's going to be tens of thousands of dollars to certify. And, again, one ACA to the other, the cost varies. Some certifiers, it might cost $10,000 to certify a farm. But, with Baystate, a small operation is looking at about $650 for certification. It's all inclusive. You don't have an inspection fee if you are located within our core certification area, which is primarily east of the Mississippi River. You're never going to get another bill for the inspection. There are, additional fees if you start exporting to other countries or you don't submit your renewal application on time. But then you factor in the organic cost share reimbursement, which is 75% of your certification fee, up to $750. It's incredibly affordable for a small farm to certify. So, I always encourage people to shop around and call a few different places because you could get very different answers on the cost of certification depending on who you're going to certify with. And also the paperwork. Back in the day, the paperwork, I guess, could have been a little overwhelming, especially going back to when individual organizations each had their own set of things. But really, the paperwork requirements just have to be transparent, and most farms, if they're farming properly, should already have the records that they need to keep to be traceable and have a traceable audit trail. You do have to have those records in place and they do have to be fully traceable, but people are often surprised at what little that looks like, and they are already doing it.
You mentioned that cost can be something that is a misconception amongst farmers. Can you talk a little bit about the actual fees, roughly, that it could be for a farm of varying size?
So a farm that is a small farm up to $30,000 a year, the certification fee is $860 a year with Baystate. It could be different with a different ACA. But then 75% of that is reimbursed up to $750 per scope of certification. So that certification fee now is $215 net. The organic cost share reimbursement program is not through Baystate. It is through, it's a government grant. You apply for it through the FSA office. But that is then on a per scope level. So if you are certified for crops and for poultry, and your certification fee were higher, then you would get that $750 back 2 times, up to $750 per scope. So even for an operation up to $150,000 with Baystate. The certification fee would be $1,800. But if you had poultry as well as crops, you're looking at a certification fee net of still only around $300 because you would get the cost share reimbursement back per each scope up to $750. And it's inclusive of your inspection. Baystate doesn't charge additional inspection fees. Again, that is very specific for us. Some certifiers, have very different fee structures than we do. But if you are located on the east of the Mississippi, there's no inspection fees. There's no additional fees other than just your base certification fee.
What are some common misconceptions about USDA certified organic that consumers, everyday people may have about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I get a lot of that too. It's very funny when I'm at outreach events, people, they don't even realize what I do, and they'll come up and say, yeah, did you know that organic is just a scam? And that's always fun. So a lot of people believe that you can just go buy a USDA organic seal and slap it on your product, and now you're organic, or that you can call a certification agency and pay them $1,000, and then they'll say, okay, yeah, you can do that. They don't realize that it's a regulatory process and that every single operation is inspected in person every single year, and that they go through the entire application process every single year. I don't think they realize that the USDA has an incredibly robust compliance and enforcement division that goes out looking for products that are labeled as organic, that are not labeled as organic. And the fine for selling an organic product willfully when you are not certified organic is $10,000 per sale. And they do go after operations that are doing that. There's a fantastic complaint procedure in place. So if somebody sees an organic farm and they think they're doing something that they shouldn't, they can file an anonymous complaint, and every single one is tracked down by the Compliance and Enforcement Division. I don't think consumers realize everything that goes into the USDA organic logo. And, they just get confused about it, and understandably with all of the other logos that are on everything.
What are some of the benefits of becoming USDA certified organic for farmers?
Well, there's a lot of benefits. It is not always for everybody, but in a lot of cases, they can then sell their products for a higher price point. There are a lot of farms that are using organic practices and they're not certified, and that is great. But if they are certified, they have the USDA organic logo to prove that, somebody outside of my family has been here and verified that I'm doing what I say I'm doing. And sometimes that can be important, especially when your outlets are in larger areas where you can't just talk to your neighborhood farmer, and you can't just drive by and see what they're doing. It's important to consumers to recognize that logo. I think that the consumer faith in it is definitely increasing. I've seen it increase over the last couple of decades dramatically, due to all of the hard work of the compliance and enforcement divisions and that the USDA puts into it. But it could definitely open up new markets to, farms specifically. Any certified organic processed product, cookies, cakes, pies, granola, every ingredient has to be certified organic. There's a very small exception of ingredients that don't, and those are usually citric acids and things that are natural substances that can't be certified organic. So if a farm is using organic practices and they want to sell to somebody making a tomato sauce, they can't sell it to them if it's not certified organic. It doesn't matter if it was grown with organic practices. It has to be accompanied by an organic certificate. It's verified by an ACA. So, it is definitely a choice thing, but I see more times than not that somebody wishes that they had certified because they've lost out on an opportunity that they would have had if they had been. You can't just get certified in a day. So,
What are some of the benefits of purchasing food that is USDA certified organic for everyday people and the planet?
they know, as a consumer, that it has been verified by an ACA such as Baystate. It's going to be the same standard. So you see the USDA logo, the regulations are the same no matter which of those 70 ACAs certified it. Exact same regulations. Um, and like we talked with at the beginning, they kind of all start with being a good steward of the land, which is where it is, good for the environment. And you can confidently buy it, knowing it's free of most synthetics and um, about as safe as you can get. There's not really another nationally recognized certification that is regulated as heavily as the organic regulations. And with the fines and penalties that are in place, it is very, very rare now that you see things that are labeled as organic that are not. And anything that is, as a consumer, anything that is on a shelf labeled as certified organic, somewhere on that label is going to be a statement that says certified organic by, and it's going to list the certifier that certifies it. If you don't see that on a label, I would recommend making a complaint about it, because there should be absolutely nothing out in the retail stream that does not have that statement on it if it has the USDA Organic logo on it. It's the name of the certifier that certifies them, and you could call that certifier up and say, do you certify this person? You could verify them in the Organic Integrity Database. If you had any issues with that product, you know exactly who you can go to. That is the regulator who's overseeing their practices.
Thank you so much for joining the podcast today, Lauren, and for all your work to help ensure that people can get access to healthy and organic food. I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.